How well do foreigners know the United States of America? Well, let's find out. Good evening, peeps, and welcome back to another speed paint. And a speed paint that's kind of different because I've actually gotten this one planned out. I'm not just rushing this one out, I'm not just improvising it. I've actually done some planning beforehand, and I've already done the drawings. So no need to worry, I can actually talk about it for once. But now, I don't know if you know me, but I'm not a United States of America citizen in any way. I've only been to America once. And I'm actually gonna name that state, so I'm not gonna spoil that just yet. But that also means that I only have very limited knowledge about America. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take 4 different states I get to pick myself. And I'm gonna take whatever I know and whatever is famous about that one state and turn it into a character design that is supposed to look like a human in the end. So I'm kind of limited to only making them human. But this is also going to be interesting because this is going to be testing the common knowledge about America that a European citizen has. Because I'm not going to research in this episode. It's all going to be based on something I've already heard or something I already know about that state. So let's hope I don't embarrass the entirety of either Scandinavia or Europe. Let's hope I nail these character designs, and if you're actually from any of these states, I would actually love to see you guys correct me down in the comments. But first up, we got probably the most famous state in the world, which is California. I think it's the one that people remember the name of the most, except maybe another one I also got on this list. Luckily, however, then California has lots of defining features and a lot of different things it's very famous for. One of which being like the movie center Hollywood being located in California. This is also why I decided to make my character sort of like a hotshot. I wanted to give him aviators, I wanted to make him look kind of cool, slim, and that's why I also decided to give him like kind of a lame Hawaii t-shirt. I mean, weed is also legal in California, so it's up to you whether or not if that's palm trees or weed that's on his shirt. That's up to public opinion. I also decided on some very subtle features actually, and that was to make his hair kind of green and his skin dark. And also make him slightly lanky and tall. And this was actually to make him kind of symbolize or hint at the beautiful redwood trees that are located in California. I don't know if they actually have them in other states, but it's just that the California redwood is very famous for like having these huge wide tree trunks and then also being extremely tall and having this distinct color. So that's why I gave my character this distinct palette. And then of course I also made him into a fireman because all we hear about on the international news is how California is pretty much perpetually on fire at the moment. I think that, I don't know if there's even a fire going on at the moment. There probably is somewhere. Luckily there hasn't been like a huge fire I've heard of recently, but still. I wanted to make him into a fireman also just to give credit to the firemen of California because they deserve the praise. They're probably the most strained and stressed out of all the emergency forces in that state. One last thing I wanted to mention about the challenge itself is that I do kind of regret, kind of like in hindsight, that I decided to make them human. I wish it could have kind of just been more freeform, given myself more permission to kind of like be creative with the design. Because right now I'm basically just giving them different fashion styles and stuff, and I don't like that. I wanted to make different character designs, and I think that would have been a little cooler, but I don't know. I already made one of them look human and then I just decided to stick to it, but that might be an interesting challenge in the future. Next up, we got the state of Texas. Texas. I'm sorry. I really tried hard not to make this one into just like kind of a redneck or a redneck stereotype or like some sort of cowboy stereotype because I feel like Texans really get the short end of the stick. I think that's what it's called because they always get like made fun of for being basically just being the South or being the embodiment of the Southern spirit. And I feel like they get made fun of for that. So I'm actually only gonna take what I actually know about Texas and I'm gonna incorporate it into this design. One of the probably most distinctive features about him is that he's the biggest character out of all of them, which makes sense because not only is is Texas the biggest state in the continental US, and people make fun of how big the state is, but it's also the place where everything else is bigger. Now, I don't know if this is a common saying, but I know that in my home country we say, in America everything is bigger. And that counts even more so for Texas, or at least that's what my mom said after she went on vacation in Houston. She kept telling me about how the plate sizes were bigger, just like the meals you would get were bigger, the trucks they drove were bigger, like the cars in general. That's also why this guy holds like a truck wheel under his arm, because there's a lot of pickup trucks in Texas. I know this, and there's actually a lot of pickup trucks in America in general. I don't see them anywhere in Europe, in comparison to America. They're freaking everywhere. But I've heard, I'm suddenly unconfident about my Texas knowledge. Give me a second. I think and hope that more people drive pickup trucks in Texas, because if not, then I'm wrong. I did, however, still give him the cowboy hat and everything to, like, you gotta stick a little bit to the redneck. But I also gave him a shirt that actually has the Lone Star flag. And the reason that I did this wasn't just because, Texas pride. It's because it's actually one of the only flags of the United States that I do know, like, except of course the stars and stripes, but that's the entire country in itself, that doesn't count. But, like, the Texas flag is the only state flag that I really know, except maybe California, which I believe is like a bear. And I only know that because I played Fallout New Vegas. If there were any last things I had to mention about this character, then it's also that he wears cowboy jeans, a very, like, Texas thing, I hope, is it? Please don't get mad at me. I also did want to make his boots seem more military-ish, because I've heard Texas has a big influence within the military power of the United States. After this somewhat static picture, we actually get somewhat of a dynamic drawing, because it's of someone running, and that's because it's New York. New Yorker. New Yorker. And actually, it was not until recently that I knew that New York is actually a state. It's not just a city, it's a state. But I promise you that most Europeans and most people elsewhere in the world think that New York is just a city. It's not a state. But I'm still gonna draw it because it gives me an opportunity to draw about New Yorkers. And the only thing I know about New Yorkers is kind of like the rude attitude, and that we always see them in movies. If there's any movie about a rich businessman or some successful guy living out the American dream, then it's like 50% of the time it's gonna be set in some Californian abode. The other 50% is gonna be set in like a New York penthouse with a businessman that either wears a tuxedo or a trench coat and a man bag. I don't know why that's kind of like, or a man bag or a briefcase, one of the two. I don't know why this is like a stereotype from the videos that I've actually seen of New York. No one dresses like that, but they just do in every single movie. If you're like an ambitious businessman, I guess that's how you dress. That's the dress code. I don't know, but that's what everyone else in the world thinks. So that's what I'm gonna put into this design. This is from a foreigner's perspective. Remember that. And the reason he's running, and the reason he also holds a sign that says to get out of the way, is because I've heard that New Yorkers really don't like people who stand still in crowds, or because people always move in crowds, it's a crowded city, so they want people to move fast and not stand in the way, and they can get kind of rude. They're the kind of people who would complain if you stand still on an escalator or something like that. I know this might be kind of like a mean drawing or a mean stereotype of the New Yorker. I bet a lot of people actually not like that, but I'm just drawing it from kind of like a foreign perspective for fun. If I had to note any other defining features, then like notice that he's holding a subway ticket, or like a sub. I think it's called the Sub in New York. He also spills money out of his bag because, of course, you're an ambitious worker. You always have tons and tons of money if you're from New York or do well in New York. Everybody knows that. He also looks at his watch, which is not only expensive, but time and busyness, as I mentioned, important in New York. And then just for good measure, I also try to draw what resembles, what looks like a burger, but what's supposed to resemble a bagel, because I don't know, I've heard for some reason that those are kind of famous in New York. Don't ask me why, that's just something I've heard. Now, wrapping up this challenge, then I've actually got the drawing that I'm not the most proud of, and it didn't turn out quite the way I wanted it to. I wanted it to be more kind of like, I wanted it to be more of an embodiment of the state that I drew, and this is kind of where I realized, oh, I'm just drawing fashion, basically. And I wanted to do more like character design based stuff. But anyway, we're sticking with it. This is the state that I visited, and it's the state that I probably know the most about by now because I spent an entire month there. And that is Washington, the state of Washington, which is probably most famous because of Seattle, and primarily just Seattle. I decided to give this character the SE on like a bow clip or something in her hair, which stands for Seattle, of course, and then I decided to also give her a shirt that is rainbow colored because it's like pride and stuff. And that's not to say the country's gay or anything, like in an offensive manner or anything, but it's just I was so astounded by the amount of like pride and progressiveness that was flagged everywhere, like all over the place in Seattle. Like these pride flags were just hanging from like buildings and from different towers and stuff. It was kind of cool to see coming from a country that's somewhat conservative. Not to make it political or anything, that wasn't the point of this. I also gave her sunglasses and kind of like, I tried to make her look a little hipsterish because, well, it's a very hipster state. There's a lot of hipsters in Seattle. And then I also gave her a coffee because you cannot walk a freaking block in Seattle without finding a goddamn Starbucks. I swear to God, the amount of times I stopped at Starbucks just to get, like, steal and hog their Wi-Fi because none in my class actually had, like, American internet. Oh, that was good times. I did also want to make it a little more techy, but all it ended up being was sort of just like a phone in her pocket, which has like the Microsoft logo on it. I actually visited the Microsoft campus, which is apparently, what was it, 10 times bigger than Disneyland. It's freaking huge, and it was amazing to see. But basically, Seattle is a very techy and very like nerdy place with both Google, Microsoft, and Amazon kind of like having headquarters there. I'm not so sure about Google, but I'm certain about Microsoft and Amazon. They're kind of like located there. I did, however, also give her a guitar case on her back to kind of like, I don't know, just like a statement of what the city also used to represent. Like in the 90s, I think, it was the 90s at least, it was a huge representation of grunge rock, even known as Seattle sound. That's something I was taught over there. But apparently grunge rock was like a very big thing back in the day, but now it's mostly tech companies and different nerdy stuff. It's kind of like Nerd City, which I absolutely don't mind as both a gamer and kind of like a geeky nerdy person. And that was it. 4 states drawn as people, or like turned into people. Once again, I still have a bunch of regrets with the way I did these drawings. First of all, I don't know why, but my hand just decided to betray me the day that I drew these. It was quite horrible. But I just decided to pull through with it because I had the time. So that means the drawings didn't end up being quite the quality that I wanted them to be. And also, I really regret kind of like restricting myself to making them just people, because once again, I kind of feel like I was drawing fashion, and that wasn't the point of it. I just wanted to make character designs, but I could have been more creative and exaggerative. But that's the only complaints I have. But I still haven't researched. I haven't researched after being done with these drawings or anything, so I don't actually know how right or wrong I am about these states. So that's gonna be interesting when I look up that, or someone's gonna correct me on that on some occasion in the near future. But alas, I will thank you all for watching. Cue that amazing patriotic American music. And Happy New Year, and as you say, good luck from across the pond. Say, can you see by the dawn's early light, but what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming. And the home of the brave. That was awful.